Hello, and welcome to episode 83 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. My name is Patrick Stemp, and as always, I have Michael Ronn here. How are you, Michael?
Great, Patrick. How about yourself?
Good. And John L. Monk. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks.
Good. So this week we are going to talk about some of the books that we're planning on reading in 2016. And before we get to that, we will do our weekly roundtable and talk about some of the books we've been reading over the past week. And why don't we start with Michael this week?
Okay. Yeah, I had a good reading week. I finished a couple of books. The first one was opened, clicked, read by Joanna Wiebe, and this is a book that was written in conjunction with GetResponse. If you guys have heard of them, they're they're like a competitor to Aweber and Mailchimp, and they're more like a premium email subscription service. But basically, it's a guide on how to write your emails and how to write emails that get opened, read, and clicked. And you get it for signing up for their email list, but it's actually a pretty lengthy book. It was like 60 pages. It was really good. Joanna's like a copywriter, so she wrote the book in tandem with GetResponse, and so there's a lot of really interesting statistics about email use and how people act when they're in their inbox that I thought was pretty helpful. So I would recommend that if anyone is interested in GetResponse. I think I'm going to go with them over Aweber. Everyone talks about Aweber, and it's always like Mailchimp or Aweber, but I think GetResponse is a much better package for me and my needs. So that's the first book I read. Second book I read was The Invisible Selling Machine by Ryan Deiss, and he is the founder The Invisible Selling Machine. Hopefully my mic's not messing up tonight, but that's by Ryan Deiss again. He's the founder at Digital Marketer, and that's a marketing book, and it's basically also about email marketing, and it's basically he outlines the system that he's used in his own business to build an email list and to keep people engaged and to get them to buy from you. And he talks about some interesting stuff that I haven't seen anywhere else. And he's got this really interesting thing with lead magnets that he does, where he'll have like a bunch of different lead magnets, right? Because, you usually offer one thing, and that gets people onto the list, right? You put your email address in and get a little cookie or something. But he does something interesting. He has a lot of different lead magnets, and then once you're on his list, he funnels you to different lead magnets, and he'll send you autoresponders based on what you've done in the last email. So all of his emails, you get them for a very, very specific reason. So it was interesting. I enjoyed that. I would recommend that book to anyone who's interested in email marketing. It's a little technical, kind of hard to wrap your head around in some cases, but I thought it was pretty good. And lastly, I started The Rook by Daniel O'Malley, which we're reading for our book club, and absolutely love it. It's awesome so far. Good stuff. So I won't say too much more about it, but
yeah, we'll touch on
that's
that
my
one
week.
more detail in the first episode in February. So,
Yeah.
John, what you been reading?
Well, just real quick, I want to say that I picked up The Rook as well. I haven't read it yet, though. It's I got it from the library, and I haven't gone to the library in a long time, so really looking forward to it sitting down on my table. So, but as for what I've been reading Lord of the Flies. Actually, I'm about 50% through. I'm It's a weird thing. I'm reading it because it's sort of important for the book that I'm writing right now. But it's like I expected it to be better, or at least better written. I'm not sure when it was written. I thought it was in the 50s, but I don't remember. It's I think that the kids, it's about these kids who they get stuck on an island and they have to survive, and they sort of, I know how it's going to end. They're going to kind of devolve. You can't spoil this book. They're going to kind of devolve into this sort of savage sort of tribes, and there'll be bloodshed and things like that. But the kids are like, 13, 14 years old, and they act like absolute morons. It's almost like the adult who wrote the book forgot what it's like to be 13 or 14. They act like it's almost caricatures of the wild and crazy British youth because the kids are supposed to be British. Um, so I find it a little hard to believe in that respect. Also, I have absolutely no idea how they got on the island. There was talk about an airplane swooping down real low, but I know that these kids didn't
Excuse me.
land with parachutes. It just doesn't make sense. There'd be like 50 parachutes shooting out of the sky. And there's talk of an atomic bomb, and they don't think that no one's going to come to them. And I mean, it's sort of munged. It's not really that great writing, and I'm just wondering how it got to be so famous. Um, that said, there's stuff that's I like about it. There's like a character named Piggy. He's really cool. I wish he was a little smarter, a little less stupid. I don't know. Maybe the movie's better. So that's it.
Yeah, it's hard
Those are
sometimes
some
to.
of the same concerns I had with Lord of the Flies. I read it as well, and it didn't blow me out of the water either.
Okay.
One of my daughters was just reading it at high school, I think in the last month or so, and I know she hated it too.
You can't tell who's talking either. He's got this thing he does. He hates the word said, apparently. He doesn't like any of the other words you could use for said. He hates all of them. So it's just like, like a bit of dialogue here, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And there's like a lot of blah, blah, blah. I don't know who's talking. I can never tell who's talking. Should be like, he smiled, blah, 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 blah. Don't even get that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Huh. Sorry.
So is that all you were reading then?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just terrible. Thank you.
Got lost in hating that book. Hey.
I finished it last week. I finished Gods of Chicago. I ended up
Wow.
loving the book. The ending was absolutely incredible. When you get to about 60% and all the gods start sort of happening, um, you find that it's actually very much like American Gods without being a ripoff. It's like so yeah, it's not they got these kind of American gods, but they're not like Thor carried over by doing the rituals and keeping him barely alive and things like that. It's nothing like that. It's like hubris is a god, and you know Capone would kind of like be influenced by him or something like that. Yeah, I really liked it. I'm looking forward to the next one. Um, so I really appreciate Aaron Sykes for that. And like I said, if you go to Aaron Sykes' website, which I don't have, just look it up, AARONSIKES. It's probably aaronsykes.com for crying out loud. He'll give you, if you email him through the form, he'll give you Gods of Chicago for free. Obviously, it'd be nice if you reviewed his book or something. That's how this works. So,
I was going to say too, if you want, you were having a problem with the dialogue there. I think one of the authors and his books that I kind of keep. I don't think I have them on paper anymore. I got to get some of them on Kindle. It's kind of for me, like the Bible on how to do dialogue is George V. Higgins, and I don't know if you've ever
can you
read
repeat that?
George V. Higgins.
George.
So
How old is this?
pretty old. I mean, last
Okay.
century. It's not really. It's not 60s or 70s probably. Actually, let me see. Um, it's so hard to tell sometimes too because they do like different releases of the books, right? But anyway, Rat on Fire is a great one, and The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which you may have seen as the movie. I can't remember what they called the movie. Um, but anyway, he's a fantastic author when it comes to dialogue.
Cool.
And so we'll move on to my weekend reading. I read a book called Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. And this is a book that really wasn't on my radar, but I was talking briefly with Brian Cohen of the Sell More Book Show, and it's a book that he had mentioned that he had read, and so I checked out the sample, and it was really interesting, so I grabbed the book from the library. And if you've read, which Michael, I think you probably have, The Power of No by Claudia Azula Altucher.
I haven't read that one.
Okay.
I
So
read the Idea Machine, but I know of it.
it's this kind of the same principle. It's not just about saying no. It's about structuring your life in such a way that you're focused on the most important things, not getting distracted by all of the little things that come up, whether it's at work or at home, and that just how much more you can get done by focusing on the one or two maybe top things that are really important in getting you where you want to be, and just kind of basically just letting everything else go. So it's a really interesting read. One of the tenets there is basically just doing less but better. So it's great if you have clutter in your house or you've got clutter in your life. It's an interesting read. The principles are pretty basic, but figuring out which of the activities that you should be keeping and which ones you should be getting rid of could be a little tricky, I guess. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. And I would highly recommend it to anyone who's feeling a little overwhelmed with too much stuff going on in their lives. Cool. And that's my reading. I did a bunch of other reading, but it was kind of like a little of this book, little of that book, and so I think I'm probably going to have a week at some point where I finish like 5 things all at once. And speaking of what we're reading coming up, we can move on to our topic and talk about some of the books that we're going to be reading coming up in 2016. So I actually, when we do this, we did this conversation last year, and you go through and you start looking at the authors that you've read in the past and kind of say, oh, look, Lee Child's got a new book coming out, or James S.A. Corey has a new book coming out, or whoever. And I did that, and from what I can tell, there doesn't seem to be a whole heck of a lot coming out. I've talked about Stiletto before. That's the sequel to The Rook that we're reading right now. It comes out in June. That's the book that keeps getting pushed back. I'll definitely be checking that one out. So my initial list then is 2 authors that I do want to catch up with this year. The first one is Tim Dorsey. He writes he's a journalist in Florida, and he's written a whole ton of books, and I'm never quite sure how to pronounce the name, but it's Serge A. Storms. He's basically a psychopath or a sociopath living in Florida, and his stories always kind of follow him around as he wreaks havoc across Florida. They're always a lot of fun. Cool. They're the kinds of stories where you have 3 or 4 different sort of paths happening throughout the book, and they all converge at the end in one really interesting and funny way. So he had a book. It looks like he had a book come out last year that I missed called Sharkskin Sweet, which I picked up just this week, so that's one I'm definitely going to be reading in preparation for the 19th book in that series. I think Amazon lists it as the 19th, but when I look on Wikipedia, it looks like they've got 21 or 22 of these things listed, so it's hard to tell. But anyway, there's a lot. And that book is called Coconut Cowboy, and I'm definitely going to be checking that one out too. And it comes out soon, January 26th. So these are great, sort of quick, fun reads. What do you guys have on your list before I go further on mine?
Yeah, did you want to just go one book, 5, or how did you want to sort of do it?
Well, how many books do you have?
I wrote down 9. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Well, you bang through 2.
I don't have that many, so you can go through some of yours, Sean.
No. Go ahead. You were going to go first. I was just curious how you wanted to break it up.
Yeah. I guess it's hard for me because I have this struggle every year that I always say I want to read more books that come out that calendar year, right? Because I don't do a good job of that. I'm always like behind. So on my list, I just had books that I just kind of want to read this year that I keep hearing about or that people have recommended. So the first book for me was Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and Amy Teagan, who was on our show last year, or 2014 now. Can't say last year anymore, but she was on our show. She recommended that, and she said that's one of her favorite books. And I have the audiobook, so I'm going to be curious to see what that's like. But the first couple of chapters I read, it was really beautifully written. So that's the first book on my list. What about you, John?
Can you actually repeat the name again?
Night Circus by
Night
Aaron
Circus.
Morgenstern. Yeah, I think it was one of the Goodreads books of the year, Goodreads Choice books in 2014. Yeah, the audiobook sounds really cool too. The narrator's pretty cool. So, yeah, that's a book that's been getting a lot of press, and it's got a really beautiful book cover too.
Cool.
So,
I'll,
what's on
I'll,
your
uh,
list?
I'll knock out three.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. I've never read Ready Player One. I'm dying to read it
Oh,
because everybody is losing their mind about this book.
good one.
I heard that the sequel's not so good, but that's okay. I'm all about the ride, not the. You don't
Well,
want to.
it's it's not a sequel, but it is the second book he's had published. Armada.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I heard his second book isn't that great then.
I wouldn't
Um,
say it's not great so much as it should be unpublished.
Lord. Okay.
Just my
Wow.
That's the
opinion.
best way of putting it I've ever heard.
Dear Lord, the poor guy. I mean, I know how he feels because all of my stuff should be unpublished. But I'm just kidding. A friend of mine,
I'm
he's
sure. I'm
actually
sure he doesn't care.
a
No.
friend of mine is actually a listener to the show, a new listener because he's a friend of mine, and I didn't know he was listening, but he sent me a note today, and he was like, "Hey, dude, you gotta read Ready Player One." I'm like, "It's on my list. I'm totally gonna read that. I got some things to read first, but yeah, I really want to read that." So
I'm kind of mean about that book and it's only because some people loved it. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people I think felt like I did, were really disappointed in it, and felt that maybe he was throat clearing and getting rid of some of the garbage that was still in his head from Ready Player One. Some of the references that he didn't have pages to slip in or something, and
mm,
hopefully that's out of his system now because he writes a great book. That just wasn't one of them. But you'll love Ready
the
Player One, I'm sure.
I know I will because all the people I like and admire and everything seem to like it, and when I say that, I mean like the books they like, I like.
Mhm.
The other thing was The Girl with All the Gifts. My wife, who's also a fan of the show, she just read it. She liked it. She had some critiques. I don't know. I've heard that it's universally loved, so I didn't know that there were a lot of critical opinions about it. Um, like I think she didn't think like I guess the book takes place in England, but she constantly kept forgetting they were in England because or somewhere in Great Britain, and because everybody sort of sounded like an American or something like that. So I'll have to see for myself. But you guys liked it. People I know liked it, so I have to pick it up and see if I like it. The
Yeah, I can't
last
recommend
thing,
that one
well, not the
enough.
last thing. Oh, you can't. Okay, cool. Yeah, but my wife is like very critical, but she liked it. She liked it a lot. She liked the Hunger Games. She was also critical of it. The last one on this three that I'm giving you is the second book by Aaron Sykes, which I've already mentioned that I'll be beta reading this year. I got to beta read it before April because I think that's when it comes out. It's titled Gods of New Orleans, actually. So,
Awesome.
So and when and I was so I guess first of all I'll ask if this book is on your list, and I'm um, guessing it's not. But have you read Lexicon by Max Berry?
no, should
Okay.
I be reading that? I don't have it. I don't have
Well,
a
and
tenth
so
spot.
I'm sure you'll read more than 10 books this year. But
Maybe.
when you were talking about not knowing what country they were in there, reading The Girl with All the Gifts, and I honestly don't remember thinking about where they were at all when I read that.
I didn't either.
And but it reminded me of reading, and I'm pretty sure it was Lexicon by Max Berry, which is just a fantastic book. Reading it and not realizing for whatever reason until like 2/3 of the way through the book that they were in Australia. And there were lots of hints there, clues, city names and stuff. It just didn't pop for me until the character is kind of getting on a flight from point A to point B, and it like clicked. I was like, "Holy cow, they're in Australia!" Anyway, so it just reminded me of that book that I would highly, highly recommend. And in thinking of that book, that could potentially even be my choice for the next or for one of the books that we all read together this year once we get through our first round. We'll have to see.
I would agree
But
with that. That's been on my list for a long time. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
I don't speak Australian, so how are we going to read this?
So what's your? I think that was only two. What's your third?
Oh no, that was three. Aaron
Was that
Sykes,
three?
Ready Player
Okay.
One, Girl with All
Yeah.
the Gifts. So
Okay. I had another.
Yeah, I had a.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, go ahead, Patrick.
Okay. So actually, this is another author that I've read in the past who is also a journalist in Florida, Carl Hyacin. I read a ton of his books, and he doesn't so much follow the same character through his adventures as Tim Dorsey does, but he does have characters that kind of pop in and out of his books. One of them is an ex-governor of Florida who has kind of given everything up, and he lives in the swamps, and he's become sort of a crazy old hermit. And Carl Hassan put out a book, it looks like recently, called Skink, No Surrender. And Skink is what they call this ex-governor. And so that I already have ready to go. I'm going to be reading that for sure. Carl Hyacin is hilarious. The last book I think I read of his was Bad Monkey, which was a lot of fun too. So I'm looking forward to getting caught up with some of these guys that I haven't read in a year or so.
cool.
Cool.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I had a couple of graphic novel mentions that I wanted to talk about. The first is I don't know when it's coming out, but I know that there's going to be an entry this year, and that's the Saga series. So I'm pretty sure that series it seems like they've been releasing one a year. So, and it's usually every fall. So I would expect the next entry to come out. Definitely very curious, and we've talked about it plenty of times on the show, but definitely very curious to see where that one goes. And
Yeah, that
then
one's
there's
not on
another
my list
entry.
because it's not there's no date for it.
It's not set in stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, they haven't even announced it. But I would be shocked if one didn't come out this year because it seems like they've released one every year. And then another one that I want to read is the next entry in the Mouse Guard series, which I talked about this one back in 2014. And the author, the name of the artist is escaping me right now, but fantastic graphic novel series about these mice that are like soldiers. Just awesome storytelling, awesome art, and honestly, like when I found out that when I got to the end of the second volume, I was like disappointed that there wasn't more. Like, so I'm really looking forward to the next entry in this series. Just the storytelling is just awesome. I mean, it's like Game of Thrones with mice. Is the best way I would describe it.
I think you should definitely check out Redwall
Yeah.
by Brian Jacques, and that's a massive series too. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy that series.
Yeah, that seems like that would be right up my alley. So, yeah, those are a couple of graphic novels that I want to read. And then from a novel standpoint, I really want to get to know more of Michael Crichton this year. Love Jurassic Park. That was probably one of my favorite novels that I read last year. And I know I'm a little late, but I want to read The Lost World and probably Andromeda Strain.
Yeah, I was going to say go back to some of his older stuff, Andromeda Strain.
Yeah.
And then the name's going to escape me right now. No, I mean Congo is an older one, but crap. Yul Brynner was in the movie about a theme park basically where with animatronic sort of robots and they all go crazy and try to kill them. And I can't remember what the heck that was.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I know which one that is.
Oh, Westworld?
Yeah, Westworld. That's it.
I don't know if that's what the book was called, but that's the movie for sure.
The movie was Westworld. Yeah, good stuff. I loved what I read of him.
Just make sure you're actually reading
fantastic storytelling.
Just make sure you're reading Crichton and not anything that they published after he died.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, that was left in a drawer and then picked up by somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, so that I definitely want to read more stuff by him this year. So those are the next couple on my list.
Cool.
John?
Just real quick, I read Andromeda Strain. It was really good. So if it holds up, you should like it. What else? Okay. The three next, I'm going to give you another three, but you know what? They actually thematically fit together like Legos. One of them is called 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
After reading The Long Walk, I called my buddy Rob, who basically reads Stephen King like constantly, and I asked him, what's a must-read Stephen King book that's like for someone who really liked The Long Walk? He says you got to read this one. And then I just recently heard them talking about it over on the Horror Writers podcast with Zach Bohannon and Jay Thorne, and it's like it's a constant reminder that I got to read this one. So it's definitely on my list. The next one would be the Gunslinger series. I read the first one, but I need to read it again to get into it. I think I was too young, came to it too early, or something like that. I just wasn't in the right place. I remember liking it and being kind of like confused by it. I guess that's kind of like what you should expect from the Gunslinger. So that's the Gunslinger, and then the last would be The Stand. I also tried reading that one. I read that one. I tried reading that one like when I was in either high school or college, and I got about halfway through the director's cut or whatever he did, like the one where it's like a phone book. And I want to read that one and see how that goes. I heard it doesn't have a very good sort of like conclusion, but you know what? I'm all about the ride. It's I can forgive a bad ending if the ride is fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like I said, there weren't a whole lot of sort of new releases from well-known authors that I read anyway that I was able to find, but I did. I had a night recently where I was kind of going through on Amazon and poking around, and my wife had just bought like a giant box set of like the physical copies of 7 or 8 of Dickens books. Something I've been meaning to read recently, but so I went on Amazon, and I already had the Dickens collection actually, but I ended up for like 99 cents a piece. I think I'm going to be doing some classic reading. I picked up the Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I got the Complete Shakespeare because it was 99 cents. I'm not a big Shakespeare fan, but I think I need to spend some time with it over the next couple of years and see if I can't undo what high school reading of Shakespeare did to me. See if I can find an enjoyment of his works on my own. Definitely somebody who deserves a second chance, right? I got the complete works of Robert Louis Stevenson, so
Nice.
I'll probably be reading Treasure Island again this year, although I have a paper copy in the basement that I also might read. Complete works of Mark Twain, complete works of Oscar Wilde. I got all the Sherlock Holmes. So I mean, God, for 99 cents a piece, you can't go wrong with these things. And you do want to look at the reviews. Of course, a lot of these books, the copyright ran out years ago. So these are, anybody can go on, Gutenberg website and pull down the text of these books and publish them on their own and in collected form and stuff like that. So they don't all necessarily do the same good job as far as formatting and tables of contents, and because when you get like the complete works of Mark Twain, we're talking not just about his novels, but like essays and speeches and all kinds of stuff. And if the table of contents is terrible, and you've got this 1,200 page, or I think one of the books I downloaded had like 6,000 pages in it, probably the Shakespeare.
Wow.
Actually, definitely the Shakespeare. So they're definitely something where you want to take a look at the reviews and see if people are talking about the formatting, if there's any issues there. But most of these were Delphi Classics. So
that's what I was going to recommend.
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely one that you can trust. And the Charles Dickens one was from, looks like Doma. Sherlock Holmes, I'm not sure, but I think my Kindle exploded this week when I was going through looking for good deals, because I also grabbed a new book from Robert Rankin, who's a British author that I absolutely love. And that book is called A Dog Called Demolition. He always writes very strange stuff. Anyway, that's a few more on my list.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to say the Delphi Classics are awesome. When I first got my Kindle, those were some of the very first books that I wrote, and I actually I'm still on their email list actually, and the guy that runs it, he's really nice. He's a really cool guy. So yeah, they're definitely a company you can trust if you're looking for public domain stuff. I had a couple more on my list. And this one's kind of a guilty pleasure, but last year I was reading some chick lit, and I read Confessions of a Shopaholic by Sophie Kinsella. And I talked about this last year, but I really liked the first book. It was fun. It was just I love the protagonist. I love the writing style. So I probably will read a couple more books in the Shopaholic series. So
Okay.
that was one of them, and then I would actually like to read more Nora Roberts too, from a romance perspective, and maybe some of her suspense stuff. I really like the Born in Fire trilogy that I read the first book of last year, and I kind of don't consider myself a romance reader, but I mean, I guess for me, I'll read anything as long as the writing is good and the characters are good, right? So that's kind of one where I kind of surprised myself last year. So I'm gonna try to read some more romance and try to find more authors that I like.
Have you read The Rosie Project by Graham
No, I have
Simsayan?
not.
Because
No, I haven't read that one yet.
that's I think probably less straight up romance and more like a romantic comedy that knows it's a romantic comedy, and I think nails all of the genre expectations like right on the head. I enjoyed it a lot. The sequel is I'm trying to remember what it was called, The Rosie Experiment, maybe. I might
Yeah,
have
that
that
sounds right.
wrong, but less less good, but still good. The Rosie Project. I
Cool.
think the Rosie Project should be a movie.
Yeah.
John, you go.
And yeah, John, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, do you have more on
Please.
your? Do you have more
No,
on your list?
I guess I had another one, and that was more in the Disappeared series by Christine Catherine Rush, and that's a science fiction series. Takes place in the future, and humanity lives on Earth, but they've also colonized the moon and have made contact with several different alien races, and it reads very much like to me it was almost like Law and Order, not Law and Order, but like a legal drama, but taking place in the distant or near science fiction future, because it follows Miles Flint, and he's a detective, and he's trying to save people from these aliens that are trying to kill people, but it's not like they're just going to invade and kill people. It's that there's all these different legal proceedings that go on between the different alien races, and it's almost like, I mean, it's almost like you're watching like some sort of a government bureaucracy, battle and unfold between all these different races. So it's very political as well. But I really liked the first book in that series. It was
The
really awesome.
mystery aspect, I kind of wonder how much she might have taken from Asimov with the robot series, because I think
Yeah,
he was the first one to do that, to merge science fiction with a good mystery story, kind of on a dare from somebody who said you can't do that. And he decided to prove them wrong, and so he was probably the first one who sort of merged those two genres like that.
yeah, definitely a really good series if you want to. And the audiobook was awesome too. It's produced by Audible. So go
Let
ahead,
me ask you
John.
a question. Ask you a question. Have you ever read Bridget Jones's Diary? If you're interested in
I
reading
have,
chick lit
and
kind of stuff.
I couldn't stand it.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
get it. It made absolutely no sense.
I
I mean, it
loved
was
it.
like reading Greek. Really?
It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
reading what?
It was like reading Greek. I could not
Oh.
understand a word that the. I have no. I read the first like 5 chapters and had no idea what was going on.
Was it because of all the crying, or was it because of
No,
the language? Like, was it a
it's
heavy
one of those books.
British?
I think it's very heavy British, and don't get me wrong, I love my British, but like it's just I couldn't get into it.
Hmm.
And I know it's the book that started the whole chick lit movement and all that, but I'm sorry if you like it, John.
I did like it, and I also liked the Sherlock Holmes, the original Sherlock Holmes stuff. So, Patrick, I think you're in for it's very, very accessible and readable. Way more. It's better than Lord of the
Mhm.
Flies. Let's put it that way. And
Yeah,
I
and,
think Lord
and
of the
I
Flies
know,
was
like
written much later.
I've read Sherlock Holmes in the past. I haven't read all of them, and I couldn't even tell you which ones I've read, because it would have been just years and years and years ago. Um, but yeah, I'm not surprised, because I know that he wrote those. Of course, they were like serialized in newspapers, and what I didn't know was that when he killed Holmes off, there were basically like riots in the street kind of thing. Not that bad, but like the newspaper that was publishing his books apparently almost went out of business because of all the people who canceled their subscriptions, and because they were so upset that he'd killed off Holmes. And it wasn't until years later that he decided to kind of resurrect him. It's, the history of these books is almost as interesting as the books themselves.
Yeah, so true.
Okay, the last three, I actually added a fourth, but I'll make it really quick. Let me see. Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I keep hearing about this one.
I'm surprised you haven't read it yet.
I think I've been saving Terry Pratchett for sort of like a rainy day, knowing that it'll be good. It's kind of like it's just sort of sitting out there waiting for me. And I trust Neil Gaiman a lot because I like everything he writes. He write a grocery list and I'll read it. So I'm really looking forward to it. The next one would be Peace Talks, Book 16 in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, if it comes out this year. There's no release date, because he's been writing the Aeronauts Windlass Cinder Spires series. Which if he doesn't publish Book 16 this year, I'll be reading that one because I figure, it's been 6 months or whatever since he wrote it. He'll maybe have another one within 6 months or a year. So I don't like to. I may actually have to go back and reread the entire Dresden Files series just to kind of catch up on it. But I don't know if I can do that being on the TBR podcast with so many different. You want to kind of come up with different things. I'm reading Dresden again, So what else? Stick, which is the sequel to Swag by Elmore Leonard.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't note it, but I actually just downloaded Swag. But go ahead, and I'll talk about that in a second.
Swag is wonderful. Let me just tell you a couple of things from Swag. It's not a spoiler. These are just teasers. He's got this list of 10 golden rules for successful armed robbery. I'll just give you the first 3. Always be polite on a job and say please and thank you. Never say more than necessary. Less is more. Never call your partner by name unless you use a made-up name. I'll actually tell you one more because it's kind of funny. Never flash money in a bar or with women. I just love it. This is this kind of like quirky, kind of like thiefy guy who is one of the main characters, and he's just it's just a really fun read, and that's why I want to read the second book. Elmore Leonard is amazing.
And so, what's the sequel called?
It's called Stick.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say I've been one of the sort of Christmas presents I got was the complete series of Justified.
Yeah, okay.
And I have read Elmore Leonard in the past. Again, I can't even remember what books, but I've read a few of them. And just in sort of watching the show, which to me is I don't rewatch television shows, but I'm rewatching this one. I would much rather watch something new than rehash something that I've already seen. But this is one show that I'm spending more time with just because I enjoyed it so much. And just in watching some of the bonus features on the discs and interviews with Elmore Leonard and the producers and stuff like that, I was like, I think I need to spend more time with some of his other books and characters. And so I downloaded Swag as well. So that's definitely one I'm going to be reading.
Yeah, I love Justified. I pooped out, and there's one season where sort of Ava spends time in jail. Mm-hmm. I just got really kind of like frustrated with that season, and that was, I think, after Elmore Leonard died.
Probably season 5. I think season 5 fizzled a little bit for some people, and then they brought it back around for the last season.
Okay. The last thing, and I'll make it super quick, but I was inspired by Michael about reading graphic novels. I've never been able to sort of get over that hump where you start liking them. Or comic books, really. I want to. I mean, people like it for a reason. So I kind of want to pick up Sandman. So there you are.
Cool. That's a good one to start with. Yeah, that's a great one to start with. You could start with if you want like superhero stuff too, like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns would be a good one too. That was a fantastic story. I mean, even Batman stuff. I mean, I don't know how you feel about superhero stuff, but just like in terms of like, that was one of the very first graphic novels that just made me a believer,
Cool.
Plus, if you want to read, if you want to go classic too, I would go with The Watchmen.
Uh,
And if you want to enjoy something that both Michael and I have enjoyed, I would definitely recommend Bone
Yeah,
by Jeff Smith.
yeah.
Bone.
I was going to recommend Bone, but I don't know like what your tolerance level is. You
What do
know,
you
like
mean?
no, I
Can I
don't mean
drink?
tolerance in a bad way. I just mean like quirkiness. Like I don't know how quirky you like your stuff. Like you seem to me more like a like serious thriller, science fictiony
No,
stuff.
no.
And
I
that's
liked.
all the stuff you've mentioned. So well, yeah, then Bone go put that at the top of the list.
I like Hitchhiker's Guide. I want to read the Terry Pratchett thing. You ever read Fool's? What is it? Fool's Brigade or something like that? That was pretty good.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
By who?
I forget. I think it was David Weber or something like that.
I think.
Yeah, that's the honore.
Yeah, that
Oh,
stuff.
It's the
okay.
It's
female
kind of
protagonist, the
quirky.
female soldier, right? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
If it's
the
David
military science
Weber,
fiction.
yeah, David Weber. I mean, the books of his that I loved was Mutineer's Moon.
Okay.
Yeah,
And the first two books in that series, and the third one, it kind of went a different direction. It seemed like he wanted to be writing historical fiction instead of science fiction, and he, rather than waiting to finish off that series, he decided to make the third book historical fiction. Not really. I mean, it's still set on an alien planet, but the situation that he put them in. So there was just a lot of description of how to build a trebuchet on an alien planet and this kind of stuff, and it
yeah,
got a little out of hand for me. But the first two books are fantastic.
I'm sort
yeah.
of excited about
Honor.
the historical one now. But what were you saying,
Yeah, I was gonna
Mike?
say Honor Harrington. The Honor Harrington series is the one I read
Right.
by David Weber. That's his
Yeah.
most.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I like the silly stuff. I'm not like Mr. Serious, you know.
I never said you were like Mr. Straight Stone Face. I just meant I wasn't sure if you'd be
Now I got a
open to
stone
something
face.
or no or
He
okay,
thinks I'm
but
ugly.
you know what I mean.
Now you're saying I'm a mind reader. What's up with
I'm just gonna
that?
stop talking.
Just
So
messing with you.
we'll start wrapping things up here. Apparently, TBR is going to be looking for a new host soon. Um,
What? Well,
you two just get along now.
If John doesn't murder me by the next episode.
I'm just messing with you.
So, did you guys have any sort of last-minute books that you want to throw on your list? I mean, God, if we talk about, I mean, I've got probably 100 other books on my my Kindle. It's just
Yeah, I could talk all night.
I can't promise what I'm going to get to this year. I've got books sitting on there that I bought early last year and never got to. You know, I still want to get to the last book in Jack White's Renegades series about William Wallace. That's a thick book and he's one you really need to kind of just sit down and spend all day reading. And I still haven't read James S. A. Corey's the fifth book in the Expanse series. Again, want to. Started it, got distracted, and it's another one that I need to get back to. We never, best of intentions, but we never read all the books that we sort of mean to, do we?
Sure.
Oh, it's
I had a question.
impossible.
How did you? I probably shouldn't ask this because you might not want to tell me. But how did you finish Misenchanted Sword?
That is one that I'm still reading. I stepped away from that one a little bit because another book that I'm reading, I think the author's name is Dan or Don Winslow, A Cool Breeze on the Underground. That was one that didn't grab me initially, but I hit a point in the book where it just sucked me right in, and I haven't been able to put it down.
Gotcha.
I have a feeling I want to finish that one by next week so that I can spend a little bit of time getting caught up on the Rook.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I just had a couple of. I'll just mention one, but I wanted to read a few more indie books this year than I had last year, and the series I'm interested in is the Singularity series by David Beers. It was on BookBub today, and it's kind of similar to my Android Paradox series, so I just curious to read it and see what it's about. It's kind of a similar premise where artificial intelligence kind of rules the world in the future, and Looks pretty cool.
Sweet.
Okay. So with that, I guess we will wrap it up for the week. Thanks for coming into 2016 with us, and hopefully you will stick around and find out what we think of all these books that we either will or won't get to, as we think. And have a great week. We do have some guests coming up over the next weeks and months, but I think we're still kind of locking some of them in. So tune in next Tuesday, and in the meantime, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Night,
Take
guys.
care, everybody.
See you later.